Life can be unpredictable and it can feel like an endless roller coaster. Sometimes it throws unexpected curveballs. You might find yourself in your 30s or your 40s looking around and realizing it's time for a fresh start. And you're not alone. Starting over can be voluntary, by your own choice, because you feel like it. Or sometimes you can be forced by external factors to start over again. But also starting over again when it looks to the outside world that you have it all, the career, the relationship, the health, or whatever else it might be, that can also be as hard. But when you know within yourself, deep down, that you're unfulfilled and absolutely dissatisfied with the trajectory of your life, regardless of how it looks to others, this can also be a very hard position to be in. So, whether you're one of those people who are starting over voluntarily, or one of those people who are being forced to start over due to external factors, as we just mentioned, the most important thing to know is that starting over, although it may seem scary, it can be an opportunity to reinvent yourself. For some people, this season is about reinvention, and that is scary. There's a lot of uncertainty, but it's not impossible. For some people, this is a moment of taking stock of everything that you have done and experienced so far. Just pausing for a moment. Stop moving at the speed of light that the world expects you to, and look around and figure out whether this is what you want to be doing. Whether or not you've been forced to start over again. What is it within your life right now that is fueling you and exciting you? What can you continue doing and what can you do without? So we'll talk about this more in this video as I do some deep stretches, which you're welcome to join in on. And hopefully you can come back to this video when you're in need of motivation along your journey and play it again and just see whether you're in your season of having to start over again. And don't limit yourself. Don't wait until the new year to start over again. Whenever this topic and when this video resonates with you, play it back again and just see how far you can go when you give yourself the moment to grow. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. Questions like, what if I fail? Or am I too old to start over might creep into your mind. But remember, age is just a number. Even if it feels like you have more life behind you than that which you have ahead of you, it's still your opportunity to make things right. Whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or beyond, as long as you still have air in your lungs and the will to try, you can start over. Starting over doesn't mean abandoning everything and everyone that you've ever known. It's about letting go of what you no longer need, what no longer serves you, and embracing new opportunities. It's a chance to redefine your life on your own terms. Don't feel like you have to go with what everyone else is doing. So I'll share my story and experiences with starting over, especially in a time of uncertainty and things that were way outside of my control. So some years ago, I recall how I was forced to start over. It honestly felt like such a testing time when almost everything I held on to and thought would last forever fell apart in quick succession. And I'm sure some of you have been there before. It's a time where you're looking around wondering, is this my life or is this a waking nightmare? So all these things were out of my control. And it was even more devastating as I felt that I could not catch a break to be able to recenter and come to terms with anything that was happening around me. I lost a very dear person in my life, someone who was a guardian angel to me and others in my family. And although it was somewhat expected, it still didn't ease the feeling of grief and loss that came with it. Not long after, a long term relationship that I had at the time also came to an end. And to add more things to the mix, I also noticed that multiple friendships that I'd had for years also started to dwindle. A lot of them were very seasonal, and I do feel as though we were all trying to hold on to a friendship that really and truly had reached its expiry date, so to say, and it started to feel very forced. So, to some degree, this one was a blessing in disguise, but it was still a shock to the system. And to add a cherry on top of this very confusing time, my work environment was becoming increasingly unbearable and toxic. And considering I was in a season where things were very uncertain and uncomfortable and just uneasy, being in an environment where I did not necessarily feel valued, or I did not necessarily feel like all the effort that I was putting in was being reciprocated in the appreciation or just the way I was being treated by management, things felt 10 times worse. And it was just as though I could not catch a break, as I mentioned earlier. And I suppose it's one of those things where it's like when it rains, it pours, whether that's positively or negatively. But this season was extremely hard. It genuinely felt like everything was just crumbling around me. And it all felt like it was happening in one fell swoop. It was all fading into a distant memory of the life I had. And if you've ever been there before, you get this deep sense of uncertainty. You feel as though you're directionless, and there's a knowing in you that you should know better and do better, but sometimes it feels like it's just Groundhog Day and there isn't anything that you can do about it. And the worst part is that you feel that you are being forced to start over when you're not ready. You know, in my situation, I was being forced to start over while I was still grieving. I was being forced to start over while I still didn't quite know which direction in life I was going in. But either way, life was not going to stop for me, and I needed to find a way to get out of this unbearable and uncomfortable season of my life. I can't lie, it was not easy. It was the most difficult thing that I gone through to date. And this is where I quickly started to learn almost overnight that although I was forced into this particular season, I needed to embrace the unknown. I needed to accept that change is scary. In fact, the thought of change during this time, even just one more change happening in my life, felt as though it would be far too much. But I had to start by encouraging myself to just move one step at a time. I decided to take this moment to allow myself to step outside of my comfort zone, to embrace the new experiences, although they were all uncertain. My heart honestly felt as though it just wanted to stand still in a moment and relive the life I once had. But then again, I realized that as I stand still, as I am stagnant, I am also robbing myself of experiences that I could potentially have in the future. And this is where I decided that in that moment, I was going to start all over again. And I decided that this season was going to be empowering. It was going to be full of opportunities, and also a season to reinvent myself and grow in places I could have only imagined previously, allowing myself to pursue the things I'd previously held myself back from doing. And also, I knew that no matter what would happen in the future, that because I have been able to ride the wave that life threw me this time around with all of these extreme things happening all at once, that I will be stronger the next time around, that this will be a character building opportunity, and that every lesson that I learn, I will use it to teach whosoever else I meet in life that is going through the same season. I decided that this season was not going to be in vain, but it was going to work for my benefit. And this was a first step that I took into allowing myself to start all over again. So, if any of this resonated with you, and you're in a similar season where you're also navigating change and you need to start all over again, or you want to start all over again, regardless of what age you are, here are some steps that I personally took, and looking back now, I think they were the only reason I managed to pull myself up from that place of uncertainty and confusion. Perhaps you can use these two to help you navigate this transition in life. So, the first thing that I did is to take some time to reflect and to also assess where I was currently in life. What was it about the situation I was in that I didn't like? What was within my control and what was out of my control? What I quickly realized is that when you start to establish these things, you take away unnecessary worry. Because if something is outside of your control, you cannot worry yourself about it. When I realized that when it came to dealing with a bereavement, that there wasn't anything that I could do to bring back the loved one that I'd lost, I quickly started to look at it as celebrating the life that they had, celebrating the moments that I had with them. And although I will be mourning all the amazing experiences that I wish we had had together and all the memories that we could have shared together in the future, that was something that was no longer in my control. So I had to relinquish the need to change that because the more I dwelled in what could have been, the more I hurt myself. So when it came to things like that, it honestly helped to sit down and to reflect on my thoughts and to write them down. Because the problem with having multiple things happening in your life at once is that it seems as though you can't catch a break, as I've mentioned, and that you're not really able to understand what the best steps are to getting yourself out of that feeling that you are in or that season that you're in. So, when I was able to really reflect and assess the things that were within my control and those things that were not within my control, I was then able to actually navigate and, in a way, charter a new path for myself to come out of that state of mind. And the next thing I started to do is to seek out inspiration and guidance from people who I truly believed in and people who I trusted. And that actually started with leaning towards what I am guided by, which is my belief in God, in Jesus Christ, and figuring out what my personal relationship was like with God at that moment in time, and also opening the Bible and seeing what it said about navigating change, what it said about navigating new seasons in life, and also how to deal with bereavement, because I felt that that was a good compass for me to start off with. And like I just mentioned, speaking to people who I felt were my true support system and seeing how they've navigated life and how they've navigated these changes in life, because majority of the people that I consider my confidants are people who are older than me, people who've really lived a full and wholesome life but still have the time to impart their wisdom into my life. And honestly, I feel as though when you have just one of those people in your life, it can make a wealth of difference between you staying stuck and stagnant in a negative situation or moving forward and becoming a better version of yourself. So I highly recommend that you start to seek inspiration and guidance in your moments of uncertainty. It will help in your personal development. If you need a change in your career, seek out information from someone who's already in that career path that you want to go into. If there's a lot of life transitions that are happening with you and you know someone else who's gone through something similar, don't sit with that confusion by yourself. Speak up and speak to people who can impart some bit of wisdom that can help you move on with your life. Now, the next thing that I started to do is to change my scenery, changing the environment around me. Now, this can look very different for every single one of us. For some of you, you may feel like you need to move to a new town, a new city, or you may just need to move the entire country and go elsewhere because this is how much you feel you need a change of scenery. Of course, go with whatever feels in alignment with you. But for me, changing the scenery looked like decluttering, redecorating, making my space feel a lot more fresher, less heavier, and moving things around that reminded me of my previous life. Not completely trying to wash it away or completely trying to neglect that I had a life prior to what I have now, but I just felt that by starting all over again, I also needed to have some sort of visual evidence that I am starting over again and that I'm embracing the change that is happening. So do whatever feels right for you, whether it's moving country, whether it's changing your room, whether it's just putting a new splash of paint on your walls that makes you feel vibrant and connected to who you truly are. Do whatever it takes to just give yourself a little bit of a change in scenery. And it may also just look like learning that you may just need to be outside with other people a little bit more so that you can connect with other people. And this may help you to get out of your thoughts, get out of your head, and in some instances, just stop pitying yourself and allow yourself to just enjoy life with other people. Do not deprive yourself of enjoying life even when it feels like everything around you is crumbling. Sometimes all you need is a little giggle and a little laugh with people that love you dearly, and you'll start to see that life isn't so bad after all. And one more thing that I definitely had to learn quickly is that patience is something I needed to have. It wasn't an option. I needed to be patient with myself. I needed to be patient with the process I was going through. I needed to be patient with those who were also around me and impacted by the changes that were happening to me and also to them. Sometimes, especially when we're going through a season of grief, we may all go through it at a different phase. There's some people who grieve almost instantly and it's like they cry it out and it's like, look, I have dealt with what has happened and I'm moving on with life. Whereas other people actually have something called delayed grief, right? So they may not grieve for the first few months or the first few years, and it hits them like a ton of bricks a lot later down the line. So I had to learn how to be patient and to also communicate to those who were also impacted by the changes that were happening during this season in a compassionate and loving way, because it was only in doing this and staying open-minded to the fact that we're all so different that allowed things to move in a positive direction, and life started to feel less heavy, and it actually started to feel like I was making progress with getting out of this phase that I was in. And part of starting over really and truly does require a lot of patience, because things may not always pan out exactly how you thought. As they say, man makes a plan and God laughs, because he has already predetermined what is going to happen in the next few steps that you cannot see. And sometimes those next few steps may not look beneficial in the now, but in the future, when you look back, you will start to realize why things happened in the sequence that they did. So I would highly encourage you again to have a ton of patience for yourself, for the process you're going through, and also for other people who may also be impacted by the change that you've also been impacted by. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier on is that I had a loss of quite a few friendships around this season. And what this meant for me is that some of the support system I previously had, or I thought I had, was no longer there. And one of the only ways that I could find a way to, in a way, be courageous to connect with people is just by allowing myself to build a new social circle. Now, this wasn't easy at that moment in time because I didn't necessarily feel like my truest self, but I just allowed myself to do things that did not necessarily require me to get into deep friendships right away. So I just joined things that were more social, but then it still gave me a sense of connecting with new people. And in this instance, for me, it was joining a gym that I was new to. And from joining the gym, I encouraged myself to start taking some of the classes that they had. And in joining these classes, I actually made two friends, that one of whom I'm still very good friends with right now. And had I not got myself out of that rut and gotten myself into a social environment, I would have never met this individual. So although I had lost, or seemingly lost, a lot of friends during this season, I had also regained my ability to be independent, to do things kind of like, that this solo dating way and enjoying myself. And I'd also regained the confidence to go into new spaces alone. So there was some form of benefit to not having those friends anymore. And one thing I would like to highlight here, and I've highlighted in my other videos about friendships, is that don't dwell too much on a friendship that might be seasonal. Don't dwell too much on a friendship you have outgrown, because in doing this, you're holding yourself back from the possibility of friendships that you have yet to make But I think it's important to know that as women, we do need a circle of people and women that we can rely upon, because it honestly does help. And there's so many other things I had to do in this season to realign and recenter myself, including investing in myself and in new skills and exploring my passions, as well as making sure that I was doing the things that were really fulfilling me in this season, because that's what I needed. But whatever it takes, I highly encourage you to do what is in alignment with you, because this is your opportunity to start all over again. This is your opportunity to put yourself on a path to success, whatever that may mean for you. I don't want you to falter under pressure. I don't want you to see this season as one of defeat or one of being derailed, but instead surround yourself with people who believe in you, who encourage you and encourage you in pursuing your dreams. This is why it's important to take account of what is happening in your life, whether the people in your life are there to boost you and to help you and to also offer you some tough love from time to time, or whether they're just there as dead weight and they're not allowing you to move forward. Don't forget, starting over does not necessarily mean that you're starting from scratch. You're building on the experience and wisdom you've gained. Your past has shaped you into the person you are today, so use that strength to create the life that you desire. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and leave a comment below on how you have started over on your journey. Thank you for joining me today.